Yes, Efnan, crucial developments on the ground just hours after the announcement of mass casualties, as we've been reporting, sustained by the Turkish military. Now, pardon me, 33 Turkish soldiers were killed in regime airstrikes, bringing the total number of Turkish military casualties to 54 since these violent hostilities began with the Syrian regime earlier in February. Now, we were just hearing from the Turkish Defense Ministry that the Russians who back the Syrian regime were aware of Turkish military positions in Idlib, across the province of Idlib, and the Turkish military were operating alone and were not aided or along with any of the armed forces in Syria. But Reuters news agency is reporting that the Russians had nothing to do with the airstrike against the Turkish forces, and they're quoting the Russian Defense Ministry. But Efnan, that statement may be met with an amount of skepticism and doubt both here and overseas. Now, that's because the Russian forces are entirely in control of the Syrian airspace and have been backing the regime of Bashar al-Assad since for many years now. Now, Turkish forces have been operating in Idlib to support the opposition forces, the Syrian opposition forces, for the past several weeks. And Turkey's also been monitoring the province with the help of military observation points, which were one of the outcomes of a de-escalation deal between Ankara and Moscow back in 2018. But as we're seeing, that deal isn't being respected on the ground by the regime or their allies. And now with the direct attack on Turkish forces, the situation on the ground could change dramatically in the coming hours.
Now, despite the Sochi 2018 deal, there is an increasing escalation of violence, as you said there, Rahul. What state are the civilians in there? Are they continuing to move towards the Turkish border?
Yes, Afnan, most certainly. Syrian civilians have been fleeing the regime and Russia's airstrikes since they began their ferocious attack on the opposition a few years ago. But now what we have on our hands is what the UN calls a humanitarian tragedy, with more than 1 million people packed into a small stretch of land, a small strip of land along the Turkish border here in Idlib. And this has been the case, as you said, since the 1st of December last year, when we saw thousands upon thousands of civilians fleeing toward this particular border. They've been living in makeshift shelters and in really dire conditions. So, Efnan, Turkey's mission on the ground in Idlib is also somewhat of a humanitarian one. And the Washington Post newspaper in the States mentioned in an editorial piece that it seems that Turkey is currently the only defender of the desperate civilians of Syria. Now, Efnan, just in the next 36 hours, a deadline set by President Erdogan will expire. This deadline orders the withdrawal of regime forces from the so-called de-escalation zone here in Idlib. So far, there have been no indications of regime withdrawal. So, as a lot of talks are taking place behind the scenes, including that extraordinary NATO conference for the sake and safety of the civilians here, we will be watching how the situation on the ground unfolds.
We will definitely be watching the situation and how it unfolds here on Tier 2 World. Rahul, thank you so much for those updates.